Welcome to Office Revenge Hub. Relax and enjoy the story.
I gave them everything for 9 years, and in return, they broke my spirit so completely I didn't recognize myself anymore. But what I built from those shattered pieces became something they could never destroy. My name is Emma Reeves, and I was the senior project coordinator at Vanguard Architecture, a prestigious firm in Boston that designed commercial buildings across New England. I wasn't an architect myself. I was the person who made sure architects could actually do their jobs. I coordinated timelines, managed budgets, liaised with clients, handled contractors, and solved the 1,000 small problems that could derail a multi-million-dollar project. Vanguard employed about 90 people. The partners were 3 men in their 50s who'd founded the firm 30 years earlier, William Chen, Robert Martinez, and James Peterson, and they designed beautiful buildings and won industry awards, but they were terrible at management. That's where I came in. When I started at 26, I was ambitious and naive. I thought hard work and competence would be enough. I thought if I made myself indispensable, I'd be valued and respected. I was wrong on both counts. My typical day started at 6:30 in the morning. I'd arrive before anyone else, review project statuses, prepare for meetings, handle urgent client communications. By 8, the office would fill with architects, engineers, and designers, all needing something. Schedule conflicts, budget overruns, contractor disputes, material delays. I managed 7 to 10 major projects simultaneously. Each one had dozens of moving parts. A hospital renovation in Springfield, a university science building in Worcester, a corporate headquarters in Cambridge. Every project had unique challenges, demanding clients and tight deadlines. I remember one particular crisis with a museum expansion in Providence. The general contractor had made a critical error in the foundation work that wasn't discovered until framing began. The mistake would cost 3 weeks and $200,000 to fix. The client was furious and threatening to sue. I spent 4 days mediating, negotiating with the contractor to absorb some costs, convincing the client that litigation would delay the project further, reorganizing the construction schedule to minimize impact, finding cost savings in other areas to offset the budget increase. I fixed it. The project stayed on track. The client stayed satisfied. My other partners praised my problem-solving skills and gave me a small bonus, but that bonus came with an expectation. I'd solved an impossible problem once, so now I was expected to solve every impossible problem. The workload increased, the pressure intensified, and the praise became less frequent, while the criticism became more pointed. I worked through weekends regularly. I answered emails at midnight. I took client calls during vacations. My boyfriend, David, complained that I was never fully present, always distracted by work stress. He was right. Our relationship suffered. My friendships faded. My health deteriorated from stress and lack of sleep. But I convinced myself it was temporary. The partners had mentioned making me an associate. They talked about profit sharing for senior staff. I just needed to prove myself a little more. Now looking back, I see how they manipulated me, how they used my ambition and dedication against me, how they took everything I gave and demanded more. The breaking point came gradually, then suddenly. It started in January with a new hire. Christine Holloway joined as a project coordinator, ostensibly to help with the workload. She was 32, confident, and had worked at a larger firm in New York. The partners were impressed by her credentials. I was relieved initially. I'd been asking for support for 2 years. Finally, someone to share the burden. But Christine wasn't interested in sharing. She was interested in replacing. Within her first month, she was undermining me in subtle ways. In meetings, she'd question my decisions politely but persistently, planting seeds of doubt. While she'd volunteered to take over key client relationships, suggesting she had more experience with demanding clients. She'd point out minor errors in my work while ignoring larger successes. The partners started listening to her. William especially seemed charmed by her. She'd stay late talking to him about her career goals, her innovative ideas, her vision for improving project management at Vanguard. I tried to address it professionally. I scheduled a meeting with the partners to discuss role clarity and communication protocols. They dismissed my concerns. "Emma, you're being territorial," Robert said. "Christine brings valuable experience. You should see her as a resource, not a threat." "I'm not being territorial. I'm trying to maintain clear communication and avoid confusion with clients." "You're overthinking this," James added. Just work together. It's not complicated." But it was complicated because Christine wasn't trying to work with me. She was systematically taking credit for my work while highlighting my mistakes. A project I'd managed for 8 months, a corporate office building in Boston, was nearing completion. The client was happy. The budget was under control. The timeline was on track. Christine had been minimally involved, maybe attending 2 meetings total. But when the partners did the final project review with the client, Christine presented the work. She discussed challenges I'd solved, decisions I'd made, relationships I'd built. She presented everything as if she'd been the primary coordinator. I was in that meeting, I watched her do it. The partners didn't correct her. The client, who'd worked with me throughout, looked confused but said nothing. After the meeting, I confronted William. "Christine just took credit for 9 months of my work. Emma, she was involved in the project. She attended 2 meetings. I managed everything else. This isn't about credit. It's about team success. You're being petty." Petty. That word gutted me. I'd worked 90-hour weeks on that project. I'd sacrificed my personal life, my health, my relationship with David, and expressing frustration at having my work stolen was petty. I should have left then. But I'd invested 9 years. I'd built relationships with clients. I'd helped build the firm's reputation. Walking away felt like admitting defeat. The situation deteriorated rapidly over the next 3 months. Christine continued taking over my projects, my client relationships, my responsibilities. The partners increasingly treated her as the senior coordinator, despite my longer tenure and proven track record. In April, they announced organizational changes. They were creating a new position, Director of Project Management. One person would oversee all coordinators and report directly to the partners. I assumed I'd be considered for the role. 9 years of excellent performance, deep institutional knowledge, strong client relationships. The partners offered it to Christine. They told me in a brief meeting. No discussion, no consideration of my qualifications. Just a fait accompli. "We think Christine's leadership experience makes her the right choice," William said. "I've been here 9 years. I've managed your most complex projects successfully. And you'll continue to do so," reporting to Christine. This isn't a reflection on your work. It's about finding the right person for a leadership role." "So I'm not right for leadership?" "Christine has specific skills we need at this level." Translation: Christine was better at office politics than I was. She'd charmed the partners while I'd been busy actually working. I reported to Christine starting in May. She immediately began micromanaging. Every decision required her approval. Every client communication had to be copied to her. Every budget line item needed justification. She also began criticizing my work publicly. In team meetings, she'd point out minor inconsistencies in my reports. She'd question my judgment on routine decisions. She'd redistribute my projects to other coordinators, in saying she needed to balance workloads more effectively. I was being systematically dismantled, and I didn't know how to fight back without looking defensive or difficult. My health started failing. I developed stress-related insomnia. I'd lie awake from 2 to 5 every morning, mind racing with anxiety. I lost weight because my stomach was constantly in knots. I started getting tension headaches that lasted for days. David noticed. Emma, you're killing yourself for people who don't appreciate you. You need to quit. And do what? This is my career. I've invested everything in this firm. Then your investment has terrible returns. You're miserable. You're sick. This job is destroying you. He was right, but I couldn't admit it. Quitting felt like failure. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, if I just proved myself more clearly, the partners would see Christine for what she was. The final betrayal came in July. I was working on a major project, a mixed-use development in downtown Boston worth $23 million. The client was demanding, but the project was high profile. I'd been managing it for over a year, through design phases, permitting, initial construction. Christine called a meeting with the partners. I wasn't invited. I found out later what happened. She told them I was overwhelmed, that my work quality was declining, that the downtown development project needed stronger leadership. She volunteered to take it over. The partners agreed. They called me in the next day, all 3 of them plus Christine. The power dynamic was clear. Emma, we're reassigning the downtown development project to Christine, William said. The words didn't register initially. What? Why? We have concerns about your capacity to manage a project of this complexity. I've been managing it successfully for 14 months. Christine spoke up, her voice sympathetic in a way that felt condescending. Emma, we all recognize you're overwhelmed. You've been struggling. This isn't a punishment, it's support. I'm not struggling. The project is on schedule and under budget. There have been communication issues with the client, Robert said. We can't afford problems on a project this visible. What communication issues? The client hasn't complained. We've received informal feedback that suggests they'd prefer a different point of contact. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. The client and I had an excellent relationship, but I couldn't prove it without seeming desperate or paranoid. This is my project. I've built this from the ground up. And Christine will continue that excellent foundation, James said. You should see this as an opportunity to focus on other projects without the pressure of our largest development. I looked at Christine. She met my eyes with an expression of false sympathy that barely concealed her triumph. I understood then. This wasn't about my performance. This was about Christine consolidating power by eliminating the person who represented a threat to her position. You're setting me up to fail, I said quietly. You take away my highest profile project, tell me it's because of performance concerns, and then what? How long until you use this as justification to push me out entirely? Emma, you're being paranoid, William said, but I wasn't. I was finally seeing clearly. I left that meeting and went straight to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and cried silently for 20 minutes. 9 years of dedication, 9 years of sacrifice, and this was how it ended. Gaslit, undermined and systematically destroyed by someone who'd been there less than a year. Over the next 2 months, my situation became unbearable. Christine continued reassigning my projects. She excluded me from important meetings. She criticized my work constantly, often over minor issues that had never been problems before. The partners watched and said nothing. Or worse, they validated her actions by treating me as less competent than I'd been for 9 years. Other staff noticed. Some were sympathetic but stayed silent, protecting their own positions. A few seemed pleased, probably viewing my downfall as an opportunity for themselves. I became isolated. The relationships I'd built with colleagues deteriorated under the weight of Christine's narrative that I was struggling, overwhelmed, possibly incompetent. My identity had been completely tied to this job. I defined myself by my role at Vanguard, and now that role was being systematically dismantled. I didn't know who I was anymore. David broke up with me in August. I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. You won't leave that job, and it's killing you. I love you, but I can't stay in a relationship where your work matters more than your own well-being. I couldn't argue. He was right. I'd chosen Vanguard over him repeatedly, and Vanguard had chosen Christine over me. I was completely alone. The lowest point came on a Tuesday in September. I was in the office late, working on a report Christine had requested, with 24 hours' notice. Everyone else had gone home. I was so exhausted I could barely focus. My hands were shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. The office was silent except for the hum of my computer. I looked around at the empty desks, the project boards with buildings I'd helped bring to life, the awards on the walls for work I'd contributed to, and I felt nothing, no pride, no connection, just emptiness. I'd given this place 9 years of my life. I'd sacrificed my health, my relationship, my friends, my sense of self. And for what? To be slowly dismantled by someone the partners liked better? I couldn't do this anymore. Not one more day, not one more hour. I closed my laptop. I walked out of the office. I went home to my empty apartment and sat in the dark. I didn't plan to quit. I didn't plan anything. I just couldn't go back. I called in sick the next day and the next and the one after that. Christine called on the 4th day. Emma, we need you back in the office. There are deadlines. I can't come in. Are you actually sick, or is this about the project changes? I'm exhausted. I need time. We all need time. That's not how professional environments work. You need to come in tomorrow, or we'll have to discuss your employment status. The threat was clear. Come back and continue being destroyed, or be fired for abandonment. I didn't respond. I just hung up. The next day, I received an email from HR. I was being terminated for job abandonment effective immediately. My final paycheck and benefits information would be mailed. 9 years, ended with an email. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt relieved. The decision was made for me. I didn't have to keep fighting a battle I couldn't win. But relief didn't last long. Reality set in fast. I had maybe 3 months of savings. Boston rent was astronomical, $2,400 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. I had student loans, car payments, health insurance to maintain. I applied for unemployment. Vanguard contested it, claiming I'd abandoned my position. I had to appeal, provide documentation, wait for a hearing. I applied for jobs immediately. Project coordinator positions at other architecture firms, similar roles in construction, engineering, development, and I had 9 years of excellent experience at a prestigious firm, but references were a problem. Vanguard was my only substantial professional experience. I'd spent my entire adult career there, and they were sabotaging me. One recruiter was honest after checking my references. Emma, I'm going to be straight with you. Your former employer confirmed your dates and title, but declined to comment on your performance or eligibility for rehire. That's usually code for problems. Combined with a termination for job abandonment, you're not a competitive candidate. I wasn't abandoning my job. I was having a mental health crisis from workplace abuse. I understand, but from an employer perspective, it's still a red flag. I'm sorry. By October, I'd applied to 48 positions, 8 interviews, 0 offers. Now my savings were depleting rapidly. I started having panic attacks, real physical panic attacks, where I couldn't breathe, my heart raced, my vision narrowed. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, convinced I was dying. I stopped eating properly, not intentionally, just from stress and lack of money. Rice and beans, pasta with butter, whatever was cheapest. I avoided friends because I couldn't afford to go out, and I was ashamed to admit how badly my life had fallen apart. I stopped posting on social media. I isolated completely. By November, I was 2 months unemployed and approaching broke. I applied for retail positions, coffee shops, bookstores, anywhere that would hire someone with a college degree and professional experience who was obviously overqualified and probably desperate. I got a job at a coffee shop near my apartment. In $18 an hour, 30 hours a week, barely enough to cover rent. If I cut everything else to the bone, I was 35 years old with a college degree and 9 years of professional experience, and I was making lattes for people who probably earned what I used to earn. The humiliation was complete. Christine had won. The partners had won. I'd been thoroughly destroyed. Working that coffee shop was when I hit absolute bottom. The manager was 26 and called everyone kiddo. Customers were often rude. My feet hurt constantly from standing. I came home smelling like espresso and milk, exhausted and demoralized. I started wondering if this was it, if my career was over, if I'd spend the rest of my life in service jobs, because 9 years at Vanguard had ended so badly that no professional firm would hire me. The self-doubt was all-consuming. Maybe Christine was right. Maybe I was overwhelmed and incompetent. Maybe the partners had seen something I couldn't see. Maybe I'd never been as good as I thought. Depression settled in like a heavy fog, not the kind where you cry all the time, the kind where you feel nothing, where getting out of bed requires enormous effort, where you go through motions without experiencing them. I considered therapy but couldn't afford it. I considered medication but couldn't afford the copays. I just existed day to day without hope or direction. The turning point came on a Saturday in December. I was working a morning shift at the coffee shop when a woman came in, mid-40s, professional appearance, expensive coat. She ordered a cappuccino and sat at a corner table with her laptop. An hour later, she was still there, clearly frustrated with whatever she was working on. When I came to clear nearby tables, she looked up. "Excuse me, do you know anything about project management software?" The question surprised me. A little. What kind of project? "Construction management. I'm trying to coordinate 3 renovation projects for my property management company, and everything's a disaster. Timelines are overlapping, contractors are missing deadlines. I'm losing my mind." Something in me sparked. For the first time in months, I felt a tiny bit of interest in something. "What software are you using?" She showed me. It was a basic tool, completely inadequate for what she needed. "That's not the right solution for construction projects. You need something that can track dependencies, manage multiple contractors, flag scheduling conflicts automatically." "Do you know a tool like that?" "Several. I used to be a project coordinator at an architecture firm. This is exactly what I did." We talked for 20 minutes. I explained different software options, workflow strategies, communication protocols. She took notes, asking smart questions. "Would you be willing to consult?" she asked. "I mean officially. I'd pay you to help me set up proper systems. Nothing fancy, just help me get organized so I'm not constantly putting out fires." I gave her my phone number without thinking. She left a good tip and said she'd call. She called the next day. "I'm serious about the consulting. Can we meet this week?" We met at a diner. Her name was Patricia Hammond, and she owned a small property management company. 6 commercial buildings, mostly offices and retail spaces in older structures that needed constant maintenance and occasional renovation. She was drowning in logistics, multiple projects happening simultaneously with no coordination, contractors scheduling conflicts, budget overruns, tenant complaints about construction noise and disruption. I spent 2 hours asking questions and taking notes. Then I outlined a complete project management system, software recommendations, communication workflows, contractor accountability measures, timeline coordination strategies. Patricia watched me work with something like amazement. This is exactly what I need. How much would you charge to implement this? I had no idea. I'd never been a consultant. I made up a number that seemed reasonable. $1,500 for initial setup and training. Then maybe a few hours a month of ongoing support if you need it. Done. When can you start? That weekend, I built Patricia's entire project management system. I set up software, created templates, wrote documentation, and trained her team. The work felt good, familiar, like using muscles that had atrophied. Patricia was thrilled. She told her husband, who owned a small commercial development company. He had similar chaos. He hired me for a similar project at $2,000. Suddenly, I had $3,500 I hadn't expected. It was more than I'd made in 2 months at the coffee shop. I started thinking differently. What if I didn't need another job at a firm? What if I created my own? I spent 2 weeks researching project management consulting for small to mid-sized construction and development companies. Companies too small for full-time coordinators, but too complex for owners to manage alone. The market existed. The barrier to entry was manageable. I needed a business license, insurance, a website, and clients. I used Patricia and her husband's payment to cover startup costs. I registered an LLC, Reeves Project Management Consulting. I built a simple website, showcasing my experience and services. Then I started reaching out, not to major firms, but to small contractors, developers, and property managers, people who were struggling with the same chaos Patricia had been drowning in. My first real pitch was to a small general contractor who'd been recommended by Patricia. He was managing 4 residential renovation projects simultaneously and was completely overwhelmed. We met at his office, which was actually a converted garage. He looked exhausted. Patricia said you might be able to help. I'm drowning. I can't keep track of what's happening on each site. Clients are calling me about delays I don't know about. Subcontractors are scheduling conflicts. I'm working 16-hour days and still falling behind. I asked about his current systems. He had none. Everything was in his head or scattered across paper notes and text messages. I can fix this. Give me 2 weeks. I'll build you a complete project management system. You'll have real-time visibility into every project, automated contractor coordination, client communication workflows, schedule conflict alerts for $3,000. He agreed immediately. The work was familiar but felt different because I was building something mine. I created his system from scratch, tailored to his specific needs. I trained him personally. I made sure he could maintain it without constant support. His operations transformed. Projects started finishing on time. Client complaints dropped. He could actually see what was happening across all his sites without driving to each one daily. He referred me to 3 other contractors. By February, 4 months after starting my consulting business, I had 7 clients. Monthly revenue was approaching $8,000. After taxes and expenses, I was netting more than I'd made at the coffee shop. Not as much as Vanguard, but enough to survive. I quit the coffee shop. My manager seemed relieved. I'd been obviously overqualified and had probably made him uncomfortable. I worked from home, building project management systems for small construction companies. The work was satisfying in ways Vanguard never had been. My clients were grateful. They saw immediate value. They paid on time and referred others. I wasn't trying to compete with large project management firms. I was serving a completely different market, small operators who couldn't afford full-time staff but desperately needed professional organization. Word spread through Boston's small construction community. By spring, I had 12 clients. Some were one-time implementation projects. Others were ongoing monthly retainers for continued support. My revenue stabilized around $12,000 a month. It wasn't the $85,000 annual salary I'd had at Vanguard, but it was mine. and I was working reasonable hours, controlling my own schedule, choosing my clients. More importantly, my health improved. I was sleeping again, eating properly. The panic attacks stopped. The depression lifted gradually like clouds clearing. I started rebuilding my personal life. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the Vanguard years. I joined a gym. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, but the possibility felt good. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not the exhausted, anxious, people-pleasing version of Emma who'd worked at Vanguard, the actual Emma who'd gotten lost somewhere along the way. Then the revenge arc started, though I didn't plan it. In June, almost a year after my termination, I got a call from a former Vanguard client, a developer named Thomas Brennan, who I'd worked with on 3 projects over 5 years. "Emma, I heard you're doing consulting now. I need help." "What kind of help?" "Vanguard's project coordination has been a disaster since you left. My current project is 3 weeks behind schedule. Budget's blown, communication is non-existent. I need someone who actually knows what they're doing." "What about Christine?" "Christine's a politician, not a coordinator. She's good at meetings, but terrible at actually managing projects. I don't know what the partners were thinking promoting her." The validation felt good, but I kept my tone professional. "Tell me about the project." Thomas's project was an office building renovation in Cambridge. Vanguard had designed it. Christine was supposed to be coordinating construction, but contractors were missing deadlines. Budget tracking was sloppy. The client was furious. "Can you fix this?" Thomas asked. "Yeah, I'll pay whatever your rate is. I need this project finished properly." I quoted him my standard rate. He agreed immediately. I spent 2 weeks untangling Christine's mess. She'd made rookie mistakes, poor contractor communication, inadequate schedule, tracking, no proactive problem solving, the kinds of errors I'd never made even in my first year. I reorganized everything, got contractors back on schedule, identified budget savings, implemented proper tracking systems. Within a month, the project was on track. Thomas was grateful. "You just saved me about $200,000 in penalties and cost overruns. Thank you." He also told me something interesting. Vanguard's losing clients. Several people I know have switched to other firms because project coordination is so poor. The partners are apparently scrambling. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly, more like quiet vindication. They'd believed Christine over me, they'd broken me down and pushed me out, and now they were suffering the consequences of that choice. Thomas referred me to 2 other developers who'd been dissatisfied with Vanguard's project coordination. Both hired me. Both had similar stories of declining service quality after I left. By summer, I'd taken 4 former Vanguard clients, not because I was trying to hurt the firm, but because I provided better service than Christine did. Word got back to Vanguard. I heard through industry contacts that Christine was complaining about me stealing clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd stolen my work, my projects, my reputation. Now she was upset I was succeeding despite everything she'd done. I ran into one of my former Vanguard colleagues at an industry event in August. Her name was Lisa, and we'd been friendly before Christine's campaign to isolate me. "Emma, it's so good to see you. I heard you started your own consulting business." "I did. It's going well." "I'm glad. What happened to you was awful. Everyone knew it, but nobody said anything." "Why not?" Lisa looked uncomfortable. "Christine made it clear she'd go after anyone who supported you, and the partners backed her completely. It was safer to stay quiet." "So everyone just watched?" "I'm sorry, I know that's not an excuse, but yes, we watched, and for what it's worth, the firm is a mess now. Christine got promoted to senior project director, and it's been a disaster. She can't manage the workload. Projects are behind schedule. Clients are unhappy. Several senior people have left. What about the partners? They're starting to realize they made a mistake, but they're too proud to admit it publicly. I didn't need them to admit anything publicly. The market was already rendering its verdict. My business continued growing. By fall, I had 18 clients and was generating about $20,000 a month in revenue. I hired my first employee, a young coordinator named Maya, who reminded me of myself before Vanguard broke me. Talented, eager, optimistic. I paid her well. I treated her with respect. I mentored her genuinely. I created the kind of work environment I'd always wanted at Vanguard. We moved from my apartment to a small office in Somerville. Nothing fancy. It's just a professional space that said this business was real and sustainable. The confrontation I'd imagined with the Vanguard partners never happened. There was no dramatic showdown, no public vindication, just quiet success that spoke louder than any confrontation could have. But I did run into William Chen in October at an architecture conference. We hadn't seen each other since my termination 16 months earlier. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me. For a moment, I thought he'd avoid me. Instead, he approached. "Emma, I heard you're doing well, consulting business." "I am. How's Vanguard?" "Busy, challenging, the market's competitive." "I heard you lost some clients." His expression tightened. "The industry's always changing. Client relationships are fluid." "That's true, especially when service quality declines." He knew what I meant. "Emma, I want to say..." "Don't. Whatever apology or explanation you're about to offer, I don't need it anymore. You made choices. I made the best of them. We're both living with the consequences." "We made a mistake promoting Christine. Her management skills aren't what we thought." "You made a mistake before that. You let her destroy a valuable employee instead of addressing the actual problem. You chose politics over competence. That was the mistake." William looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better." "Yes, I did, but your apology doesn't change anything. I've built something better than anything I could have had at Vanguard. So thank you, in a way. How you freed me to create my own future." I walked away from that conversation feeling complete. Not angry, not vindictive, just finished with that chapter. Reeves Project Management Consulting continued thriving. We expanded services. We hired 2 more coordinators. We developed proprietary systems and tools that became our competitive advantage. By the second year, annual revenue exceeded $300,000. I was earning more than I had at Vanguard, with better work-life balance and complete autonomy. I learned that Vanguard lost 2 of the 3 partners in a restructuring. William Chen retired early. Robert Martinez left to join another firm. Only James Peterson remained, struggling to keep the company afloat. Christine was eventually let go. While I heard she moved to another city and took a mid-level position somewhere else, I felt no satisfaction in her failure, just a distant recognition that karma or consequences or whatever you want to call it eventually catches up. I started dating someone. His name was Marcus, and he was a software developer with no connection to architecture or construction. He knew about my Vanguard history but didn't define me by it. "You're not broken," he said once when I mentioned how Christine had tried to destroy me. "You were broken down by a toxic environment, but you rebuilt yourself. That's different." He was right. The Emma who'd left Vanguard had been shattered, but the Emma I'd become was stronger, wiser, more resilient. The breaking had been brutal, but the rebuilding had been transformative. 3 years after my termination, our Reeves Project Management Consulting had 12 employees and annual revenue exceeding $700,000. We'd outgrown Vanguard's project coordination department in size and revenue. I was invited to speak at an industry conference about small business success in construction services. Standing on that stage, talking about building a company from nothing, I thought about that Tuesday night in September when I'd sat in an empty office feeling completely destroyed. If someone had told me then what would happen next, the coffee shop job, the consulting business, the success I'd build, I wouldn't have believed them. The pain had felt permanent. The defeat had felt final. But pain isn't permanent, and defeat is only final if you accept it as such. The revenge I'd imagined during those dark months, public humiliation of the partners, Christine's dramatic downfall, Vanguard's spectacular collapse, never materialized. Instead, I achieved something quieter and more meaningful. I proved that being broken doesn't mean staying broken, that toxic environments don't define your worth, that success built on your own terms is more satisfying than any success in someone else's company could ever be. Vanguard tried to destroy me. They did destroy the version of Emma who'd worked there, the people pleaser who sought validation from men who didn't deserve her loyalty, who sacrificed her well-being for a company that saw her as disposable. But from those pieces, I built someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who wouldn't accept mistreatment, someone who could create rather than just serve. The best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was becoming someone they could never touch again, someone whose success existed completely independent of their approval or recognition. I still work hard. I still manage complex projects. I still solve problems that other people can't solve. But now it's for clients who value me, employees who respect me, and a business that reflects my values. The Emma who worked at Vanguard is gone. She was broken so completely that she couldn't be put back together. But the Emma who emerged from those shattered pieces is better than the original, stronger, wiser, free. If you've ever been betrayed at work, you're not alone. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe to Office Revenge Hub for more powerful workplace revenge stories.